When we talk about deep pain, especially the suffering that comes from another person's quiet control, we are not just discussing physical hurts or scars that people can see. Instead, we are speaking of wounds that are unseen, the shaky breaks in the mind, the secret places where the spirit has been stabbed, emptied, twisted, and fooled. Abuse by a narcissist is not simply open cruelty. It is often done silently, in hidden ways, in quiet words that settle beneath the surface of the mind and take root in the unconscious. And the one who feels this pain the most deeply is often the empath, the person whose nature is built on openness, a willingness to receive, and a strong urge to blend with the feelings of others. The empath is like a cup without a cover, soaking up not just the world's beauty and energy, but also its poisons, its anger, and its hopelessness. When such a person meets a narcissist, the image of consuming greed and empty self-worship, the meeting is not random. It is an ancient dance, a ceremony where one is used up and the other is fed. Yet strangely, this meeting is also a way forward, because what is hurt inside the empath is exactly what must wake up, and what looks like ruin is actually a test. The narcissist, in their dark role, becomes an unwilling teacher, a shadowy figure who forces the empath to face the last hardest part of becoming their true self. But what is this final part? Many people think healing means going back, returning to some pure state before the hurt, before the shock, before the betrayal. But this is not true self-discovery. The final stage for the empath is not to go back, but to change. The empath cannot return to who they were before the narcissist came into their life. That door is closed. To go back would be to undo the lesson. Instead, the empath must move forward into a state that goes beyond being a victim or a rescuer, into a new kind of selfhood where they no longer live as a container for other people's problems, nor as a servant to their own need to fix what cannot be fixed. The final stage is accepting the dark parts of the self, welcoming the image of the wounded healer, and finding the self that is beyond the tricks of both pain and perfect love. Imagine, if you will, the dream of an empath who has suffered for years under a narcissist's watch. In the dream, they walk through a forest at night, holding a lantern that shines weakly. Shadows press in from every side. Suddenly, they see a figure ahead, beautiful, glowing, magnetic. The figure smiles, takes their hand and whispers promises of light and comfort. Charmed, the empath follows deeper into the forest, only to find the figure fading, disappearing into the darkness, leaving them alone with a lantern that has gone out. This is the core experience of narcissistic abuse, the false promise of light that disappears, the broken trust, the sudden fall into darkness. Yet the dream doesn't end there. In the quiet, the empath looks down and realizes their own hands are glowing faintly, their skin itself giving off the light they sought from someone else. This is the final stage, the moment of realizing that the light was never in the narcissist, nor in their false promises. The light was always within the empath. The one so used to reflecting, mirroring, and soaking up must finally become the source. The narcissist becomes the harsh test, the shadow teacher, forcing the empath to discover that their energy doesn't need to be taken from others, but shines from within the self, from the image of completeness hidden deep in the mind. This stage, however, is not reached easily. It only comes after great despair, after the death of false hopes. Many resist this death. The empath often holds on to the false idea that if they love harder, wait more patiently, forgive more widely, the narcissist will finally show their hidden heart. This is the image of the savior who has lost their way, the healer destroyed by the wound. Yet, as I have seen in many people, there comes a moment of breaking. The empath wakes up one day, not with anger or even sadness, but with a strange quietness. It is as if something inside them has finally let go of the need to prove their worth through suffering, the urge to fix what is unfixable. In this quiet, the empath sees that what they were chasing was not love, but a reflection of their own shadow self that they had not lived out. The narcissist, in truth, is a mirror of the empath's hidden hunger, their own secret wish to be seen without giving constantly, to be adored without effort, to be the center of another's world. The empath, who has long judged this desire as selfish or wrong, pushes it away and meets it in the form of the narcissist. So the dance is not just between two people. It is an ancient pattern, a joining of opposites in a twisted way. Only when the empath dares to take back this hidden hunger, to admit that they also hold a shadow that wants recognition, can the false image disappear. The narcissist then loses their power because they no longer carry the piece of the empath's soul that was pushed away. And so the final stage is not forgiveness in a simple way, nor is it revenge. It is blending. It is the empath looking at the dark things they have survived and seeing in it the pattern of the mind's deepest law, that completeness can only appear when light and shadow are joined. To completely reject the narcissist is to reject the shadow. To cling to them is to remain caught in the false image. But to see them as the dark helper in one's own journey to self-discovery is to gain freedom. Think about the old image of the alchemist working at their furnace. The base material, dirty and imperfect, is placed into the fire. The alchemist does not hate the base material, nor does he praise it. He subjects it to fire, to breaking down, to transformation. It is the same for the empath. The narcissist is the lead, heavy, toxic, unrefined. The empath is the alchemist, though they don't know it at first. Through pain, they are forced into the furnace of despair, and in that harsh test, they wake up to their own ability to change things. When they come out, they are no longer broken victims, but beings of gold, shining not because they were untouched by darkness, but because they have gone through it and claimed its wisdom. Yet I must warn you, this stage is not the victory of the ego, the small self. Many empaths, when they break free, believe they have won, that they are stronger, better, immune. But this is just another mask of the ego, a fierce defense against weakness. The true final stage is modesty before the self. It is the realization that one's survival, one's awakening, was not the work of their small will, but the unfolding of the deeper self, the image of completeness that guides every soul toward self-discovery. The empath bows before this inner self, realizing that even the darkest suffering was part of a larger plan, a mysterious design in which nothing was wasted. I have seen people who, after long years of abuse, described themselves as dead, empty, hollowed out. Yet when they began to dream again, when symbols came from the unconscious, I saw a rebirth. One person dreamed of a snake shedding its skin, leaving behind the pale shell of its former self. Another dreamed of a cracked vase from which flowers bloomed despite the brokenness. These images are not random. They are the mind's proof that the final stage is not destruction but change, not emptiness but renewal. The empath, when they reach this point, no longer seeks to blindly merge with others. They recognize the sacred boundary of the self, not as a wall, but as a breathing skin that allows connection without being lost. They become healers, not by constantly soaking up pain, but by giving off their presence. They laugh without desperation, forgive without losing themselves, give without self-harm. The narcissist no longer defines them. The shadow no longer scares them. They have become whole, and in that completeness, they are finally free. This is the secret. The empath's final stage is not weakness overcome, nor power seized, but the self found. It is a return to the deepest center where opposites meet, where the wound becomes the source of wisdom, and where the soul discovers that even the darkest challenges serve the light of self-discovery. There is a specific quietness that arrives when the empath begins to step out of the complicated situation of abuse. It is not the quiet of peace at first, but of emptiness. Many describe it as if they are standing in a large, empty hall where the echoes of voices once hurt them, and now there is only the sound of their own steps. This quiet is scary for someone who has lived for so long by tuning themselves to the emotions of others. The empath has known themselves mainly through reflection, through taking on the grief of another, through feeling the unspoken sadness of a partner, through absorbing waves of pain that swirl around them like invisible winds. When that mirror is broken, when the narcissist is gone, when the tie is cut, the empath is left with a question they can no longer avoid. Who am I without the storm? This question is the door to the final stage, because only in the dry quiet of this hall can the true self speak. The empath begins to sense that what they called kindness was sometimes a defense against their own fear of being left alone, that what they called love was sometimes a refusal to face their own inner emptiness. Here, the image of the desert appears. The desert is the place where every false watering hole must be shown as an illusion, where the traveler is forced to face thirst until they realize the spring is inside. The empath, stripped of outside supports, feels the burning heat of loneliness. Yet within this loneliness, the first seed of self-discovery grows. Dreams often appear at this stage. I recall one in which a person described being chased through endless passages by a shadowy figure. At last, they entered a room with no doors and no windows. The chaser disappeared, leaving them alone. In the middle of the room was a mirror. As they looked, they saw their reflection dissolve into light. This is the mind's way of showing that what they run from, what they fear in the narcissist, is finally an image leading back to themselves. The abuser forced them into the room with no way out, the place where they must finally meet the self. And though it seems like a jail at first, it becomes a birthplace of freedom. It is common for the empath to feel anger rising here. Anger not only at the narcissist, but at themselves, at their own willingness to go along, their own blindness, their own constant giving. This anger is important. Too often, empaths have been taught that anger is wrong, that to be good is to be endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving. Yet, anger that is pushed down turns sour in the unconscious, causing bitterness and betraying the self. When the anger finally breaks out, it is not a step backward, but a move toward completeness, because anger, when accepted, becomes the fire that burns away false ideas and sets clear boundaries. Without it, the empath remains a saintly ghost, drained of life. With it, they begin to stand in their own body, to claim their right to exist not only for others, but for themselves. This is where the work with the shadow deepens. The empath must admit the shadow of their own desire for control, their own hidden manipulation through self-sacrifice. Yes, it is hard to see. But here lies the truth. The empath has not only been a victim, they have also gained identity, power, even moral superiority from their role as giver, healer, martyr. Admitting this does not undo the narcissist's cruelty, but it brings balance. It saves the empath from the prison of being too innocent. True self-discovery does not rely on the false idea of being completely good, but on accepting the puzzle that we are light and darkness, hurt and hurting, healer and manipulator. Only when the empath sees their reflection in this dark mirror do they become free of the need to repeat the pattern. Think again of the image from alchemy, the joining of opposites. The empath and the narcissist are two extremes of the same ancient pattern, one giving without end, the other taking without limit. Both are unbalanced expressions of the same inner energy. The final stage for the empath is to bring together the very qualities they pushed away. They must learn to say no, to stand firmly in the center, to express a healthy amount of what the narcissist twisted: self-assertion, will, power. The narcissist took these to extremes, disconnected from empathy. The empath must take them back, softened by kindness. In this blending, they become whole. At this point, many describe feeling as if they are shedding a skin. Much like the snake, the old identity of the endless giver cracks and falls away. The empath begins to experience themselves as a separate being, not just a reflection of others' needs. They find a puzzling truth. Only when they stop compulsively soaking up others' pain do they actually begin to heal others honestly. This is because healing now flows not from being drained, but from having plenty, from the light of a self that has tasted its own depths. There is a powerful ancient image at work here: the wounded healer. The empath who has gone through narcissistic abuse becomes, in time, one who can guide others through the same difficulties. But unlike before, when they sought to heal in order to get love, now they heal because healing is the natural result of their own completeness. They no longer need to rescue in order to prove their right to exist. They have gone through death and rebirth, and what they give now is not desperation, but wisdom. Yet, I caution you, the path is not straight. The final stage does not erase the past, nor does it protect the empath from future hurts. Rather, it gives them awareness. They may still meet narcissists, still feel the pull of old ways, but now a voice inside whispers, "This is the shadow's dance. You do not need to enter again." The empath may feel the temptation, but no longer confuses it with fate. This is freedom, not from pain, but from compulsion. The image that often comes is of a butterfly emerging from the chrysalis. The chrysalis itself was formed by suffering, by the suffocating hold of manipulation. Inside it, the empath dissolved. Their old identity turned to liquid, and then, at the right time, the wings unfold. Fragile at first, trembling but soon carrying them into places they never imagined. The narcissist, once the captor, has truly been the cocoon, the dark container within which transformation happened. And here lies the spiritual part. In the language of myths, the empath has gone through a descent into the underworld. They have been Orpheus, searching for love in the depths only to lose it. They have been Persephone, taken into Hades, forced to eat the pomegranate seeds of shadow. And like all those who have passed through a trial, they return changed, carrying inside them a knowledge that cannot be taught with words alone. They have touched the deepest night and emerged, bringing back the light of awareness. This is why I say the final stage is not simply recovery. Recovery suggests going back. But self-discovery is never about going back. It is about becoming. The empath after narcissistic abuse is no longer who they were. They are not merely healed, they are transformed. And this transformation brings with it a responsibility to live honestly, to no longer betray themselves, to respect the voice of the self above the noise of others. So the quiet that once terrified them becomes the quiet of inner strength. They learn to be alone without falling apart, to feel without drowning, to love without losing themselves. Their compassion deepens, strangely, because it now includes themselves. They see the narcissist not as an eternal enemy, but as an embodiment of shadow, a figure that forced them to claim their own soul. And in this realization, forgiveness may come, not the simple forgiveness of excusing harm, but the profound forgiveness of understanding that even the darkest figures serve the mystery of completeness. This, then, is the empath's final revelation, that they were never powerless, never broken, never defined by the abuse. They were going through a trial written in the ancient language of the mind, and now, standing on the other side, they carry not only scars but symbols, not only memories but meaning. The narcissist took much, but in taking, they have strangely given the empath themselves. There is a moment, often quiet and unseen by the world outside, when the empath feels the first beat of a deeper center within themselves. It comes not as a big win or a huge discovery, but as a gentle whisper. You no longer need to beg for what you already are. This whisper is the self, long buried under layers of false ideas, finally rising to the surface. And in that rising, a new phase of life begins, one that is not defined by how much pain they can bear or how deeply they can love the unlovable, but by how clearly they can see the patterns of the mind that have held them captive. For too long, the empath has been caught in the ancient dance of rescuer and victim. The narcissist played the role of the taker, but beneath this was the empath's hidden agreement to keep giving so they wouldn't have to face their own shadow. Now at last the curtain has been pulled back, and the empath sees that their suffering was not pointless, but it was also not random. The mind does not allow such intense experience without a reason. The self guides through symbols, through false ideas, through relationships that seem destined until the soul can no longer avoid its own hidden truth. The empath begins to notice that their dreams change tone. They were once filled with being chased, with helplessness, with endless mazes. Now, images appear of doorways, of gates, of bridges. One dream a patient described was of standing on a cliff and seeing a bridge of light reaching across a deep gap. At first, they paused, terrified of the emptiness, but then they realized the light came from their own chest, creating the path forward. Such images are not random. They are the mind's proof pointing toward the stage of completeness. The empath is no longer running from the shadow. They are building the way forward with their own inner being. But this forward path demands a trade-off. It demands the death of old identities, old comforts, old false hopes. The empath must give up the belief that their worth is tied to suffering, that their love can rescue what is unwilling to change, that being a martyr is noble. These false ideas, while once needed for survival, now become poison. If they hold on, they will become stuck, repeating the same cycles with new people. Only when they dare to let the old self die can the new self appear. This is why so many describe this stage as a kind of death. It is a descent not only into sorrow for what was lost, but sorrow for the self that never truly existed, the self that was always defined by others. In this sorrow, the image of the phoenix comes alive. The fire burns away the false feathers. The ashes consume what was false. And from the ashes, something winged and eternal arises. The empath, through pain, is reborn not as a cup, but as a flame. And yet, surprisingly, this rebirth does not lead them away from the world, but deeper into it. Where they once dissolved into others, now they meet others as equals, not as rescuer or victim. Their kindness no longer traps them because it is connected to the truth of good judgment. They can say no without guilt, yes without desperation. They can see suffering without drowning in it. They can love without losing their center. This is the result of self-discovery. To stand whole and allow others to be whole without the urge to control either by giving or taking away. The empath now meets the image of the wise elder within themselves. This figure may appear in dreams as a guide, a sage, a mysterious person who speaks in riddles. At first, the empath resists because they have long believed wisdom must come from someone else, someone stronger, someone more powerful. But slowly, they realize this elder is their own soul, speaking back to them from the depths, giving them the wisdom they sought in the narcissist. The promise of approval, the feeling of certainty, was always a twisted reflection of this inner elder. Now they begin to listen inside, to trust the voice that whispers not in manipulation, but in truth. It is here that many become healers, counselors, artists, or spiritual seekers, not because they are trying to save the world anymore, but because their very presence shines with the energy of someone who has brought together shadow and light. Others sense this honesty, a stability, a kindness free of hidden motives, and in this presence, others begin their own awakening. This is the empath's final gift, not the forced gift of overgiving, but the natural gift of completeness. One must understand the final stage is not perfection. It is not that the empath never feels fear, never feels pain, never longs for love. It is that these emotions no longer control them without their knowledge. They can watch their own shadow without being owned by it. They can see their own wounds without falling apart. They can even meet another narcissist, and instead of being caught, they recognize the ancient pattern immediately and step aside. This is mastery, not of control over others, but of awareness. From the spiritual point of view, this is the soul's return to its center. The self is the mandala, the circle with a center point. For so long, the empath moved in circles outside, spinning around others' needs, others' shadows, others' false ideas. Now, slowly, they return to the center. From here, the opposites no longer tear them apart. They see that love and anger, light and dark, giving and receiving all belong to the same whole. They no longer fear the shadow, for they know it is the door to wisdom. They no longer idealize the light, for they know light without shadow is blinding. They have entered the sacred tension of opposites, and in this tension, they are whole. It is as if the empath becomes a living symbol. Their very life becomes a myth, not in the sense of fantasy, but in the sense of embodying ancient truth. They are the one who has gone down into the underworld and returned carrying the fire of awareness. They are the one who has faced the devourer and emerged unharmed. They are the one who has shed the old skin and now walks with wings. In their story, others see their own, and so the cycle continues, not of abuse, but of awakening. This is why I tell you, the final stage of the empath after narcissistic abuse is not simply survival. It is self-discovery. It is the journey from false ideas to being controlled to blending. It is the path through shadow into self. And in this final stage, the empath stops being defined by the wound and becomes defined by the completeness that grew from it. They become not only healed, but healers, not only free, but liberators, not only whole, but symbols of what it means to be fully human.